Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us inward, far beyond what the eyes can see, into the hidden architecture of your own being, into the soft spirals of a molecule that has been quietly writing your story since the moment you began. We'll wander through its letters, its folds, its memories, and see how something so small can carry the poetry of an entire life. Before we settle in, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you truly find these calm explorations soothing. And when you're ready, feel free to dim the lights, pull a blanket a little closer, or let the gentle hum of a fan keep you company. There's no hurry here. If your mind begins to drift, that's perfectly fine. Let it wander, like starlight across the dark. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story, one calm thought at a time. Now, before we start this journey, a gentle reminder: this exploration is meant to soothe and fascinate, not to diagnose or instruct. Nothing you'll hear tonight is medical advice. It's simply an invitation to marvel at the incredible story written deep within you. Inside every one of your trillions of cells lives a silent storyteller. It has no pen, no paper, and no ink. It writes using only 4 letters: A, T, C, and G. These are the initials of 4 chemical shapes: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. If those names sound a bit too sharp for this hour, think of them instead as 4 musical notes, softly repeating in endless variations, composing the quiet symphony of your life. Every breath, every heartbeat, every thought begins from this alphabet of 4. It might seem limiting, 4 letters to describe all of you. But then again, we use just 26 letters to create every poem, song, and novel ever written. With 4, nature wrote not only you, but every tree, bird, whale, and wildflower on the planet. The secret lies not in the letters themselves, but in their arrangement, in the rhythm, the order, the sequence. It's like a melody that changes its meaning depending on how the notes are placed. When adenine meets thymine and cytosine joins with guanine, they form gentle pairs, partners that always seek each other, like dancers who never cut in line. Together they create a long, winding ladder, the elegant spiral we know as DNA, the double helix. If you were to take the DNA from just one of your cells and stretch it out, it would reach about 2 meters in length. 2 meters of poetry, folded inside a nucleus smaller than a speck of dust. That's the kind of quiet miracle we live with. A scroll of instructions folded perfectly into a grain of life. Now imagine that same process multiplied through your body, through the roughly 37 trillion cells that make you who you are. If all your DNA were laid end to end, it could stretch from Earth to the moon and back again, not once, but many times. And yet, here you are, holding all of that vastness in the gentle outline of a single human shape. Each cell holds the same library, yet each chooses a different book to read. In your skin, one set of instructions is opened, teaching how to form a barrier between you and the world. In your eyes, another section glows to life, forming pigments that catch the morning light. In your heart, the code beats to a rhythm that began long before you were born. Every cell, reading its chapter, together composing the whole of you. It's as though the same musical score is being played on countless instruments, each bringing its own tone, its own voice, to the quiet orchestra of your being. And though it feels personal, intimate, this code isn't yours alone. You share about 99.9% of your DNA with every other person on Earth. That means the difference between you and me, between any 2 people, lives in just 1/10 of 1% of that vast molecular library. Within that tiny sliver lie the unique brushstrokes of individuality, the curve of a smile, the sound of a laugh, the shade of an eye. In the rest, we're nearly indistinguishable. It's a humbling thought. that beneath all our differences we're written from the same script. DNA isn't confined to humans either. It's the universal language of life. The same alphabet that writes your heartbeat also writes the rustle of leaves, the flick of a fish's tail, the shimmer of a dragonfly's wings. A banana, humble and yellow and patient on the counter, shares about 60% of its DNA with you. That doesn't mean you're part fruit. It simply means that the language of life is ancient, shared, and continuous. We are variations on a theme composed billions of years ago, different verses of the same cosmic song, and yet, this story isn't static. DNA doesn't sit still like ink on a page. It folds, unwinds, copies, and repairs itself in real time. A living manuscript being edited every second. Enzymes glide along its length, reading and rewriting, making sure the story continues without interruption. Occasionally a letter changes, a quiet typo in the text. Sometimes it's harmless, sometimes helpful, sometimes it leads to trouble. But without these tiny changes, evolution, that slow storyteller of time, would have no new material to work with. Even the mistakes have purpose. As you rest tonight, you can imagine this world inside you. Within each cell, that spiral staircase of life is turning, its rungs made not of wood or stone, but of atoms gently paired together. The code hums softly, invisible and constant. You may think of yourself as a single person, but you're also a collection of quiet libraries, each one reading the same book, line by line, night after night. And if you could listen closely, close enough to hear molecules move, perhaps you'd catch a faint rhythm, a soft rustling, as your DNA keeps reading, folding, and whispering the story of you. Your DNA has been working since the very beginning, when you were nothing more than one tiny cell. It remembers the storms your ancestors survived, the foods they found, the climates they adapted to. It carries faint echoes of the people you come from, their strengths, their mistakes, their quiet hopes. Every cell in your body is both ancient and new, carrying a story written by countless lives before yours. You are a living archive, a piece of cosmic memory shaped into human form. The ink of your existence is written in a molecular language older than language itself. So as you breathe softly now, maybe let that thought settle in. Inside you, at this very moment, a story is still being written. Letter by letter, pair by pair, line by line. It never stops, it never rushes, it never sleeps. And maybe, as you drift closer to rest, you can feel a small gratitude for that silent author, still writing, still keeping the lights on in the quiet library of your body. If we follow the thread a little further, we find ourselves standing at the edge of a remarkable language, the alphabet of life itself. At first glance, it looks impossibly simple. 4 characters, 4 letters, 4 shapes that repeat again and again, A, T, C, and G. Just 4 notes in a quiet melody that somehow composes every living thing that breathes, grows, or dreams. These letters aren't ink or sound, but chemistry. Tiny molecules with distinct personalities, meeting and embracing in careful patterns. Yet, from that simple pairing, entire universes of life emerge. Think of it this way. With just 26 letters, humanity has written all of its stories, from lullabies to laws, from grocery lists to galaxies of imagination. Nature, ever efficient, works with fewer. With 4, it writes forests, oceans, cities, and you. Each strand of DNA is a long sentence written with those letters. Some phrases are short, others stretch on like sagas. Together, they form an unbroken script that guides how to build a body, how to heal, and how to adapt when the world changes its mood. Each of the 4 bases, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, fits together in a predictable rhythm. A always finds T, and C always finds G. It's a rule of pairing that holds everything together. You might picture them like loyal partners in a dance, moving across a microscopic ballroom, each step mirrored in perfect harmony. Those pairs form the rungs of a ladder, and that ladder coils into the elegant spiral known as the double helix. This shape, so iconic now, was once an unseen secret. It was only in the middle of the 20th century that humanity finally glimpsed it clearly. A photograph known as Photo 51, captured by Rosalind Franklin, showing a ghostly X-shaped pattern that revealed the truth. DNA was a helix, twisting endlessly inward. When James Watson and Francis Crick built their model in 1953, the world of biology shifted overnight. That double spiral explained so much: how DNA could copy itself, how information could remain stable across generations, how such fragility could also hold immense strength. The structure was both poetic and practical, the kind of beauty nature often hides in plain sight. Imagine a staircase that climbs not upward, but inward, turning forever toward the centre of life. Each step is a pair of bases held together by faint hydrogen bonds, gentle but countless, and together strong. One base pairs through 2 bonds, another through 3. The difference gives regions of the spiral different tightness, like melodies played in different keys. You can imagine each side of the helix as a mirror of the other. If one reads ATGC, the opposite strand reads TACG, 2 reflections sharing the same story. When a cell divides, it unzips that helix, each strand becoming a guide for its twin. It's like a scribe copying a book line by line, except both copies write themselves at once. Every second, millions of such pages are reproduced within you, precisely, quietly, without rest. Once in a while, a word is misspelled, but most of the time, the story repeats perfectly. And yet, the double helix isn't just efficient, it's astonishingly elegant. Each turn of the spiral takes about 10 pairs of letters. The sugars and phosphates that form its outer rails create a pattern of rhythm: sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate. A molecular heartbeat that never skips. Scientists often describe this as a code, but perhaps that word feels too cold. It's more like calligraphy, a script that carries both beauty and meaning, every curve necessary, every loop deliberate. If we could somehow magnify your DNA until you could hold it, it might resemble a shimmering ribbon of glass, twisting gently, rippling with reflections of light. You'd see how it folds back on itself, compact and protective, and how each turn of the spiral hides within it entire histories of ancestry and evolution. Every tiny segment, every cluster of letters holds instructions not only for how to build you, but how to rebuild you again and again, repairing, renewing, adapting. The sheer length of this script is almost unimaginable. In every cell of your body there are about 3 billion letter pairs, 3 billion tiny steps in that spiral staircase. If you type them out, 1 per second without sleep, it would take more than a century to finish. And yet, this vast text fits comfortably inside a cell's nucleus, a sphere smaller than a grain of sand. The compression is so perfect that it's as if an entire library were folded into a single pearl. You carry trillions of those pearls, each one identical, each one humming quietly, each one writing the same name, yours. But the marvel of DNA isn't only in its size or symmetry, it's in its faithfulness, the way it remembers how to be you, exactly you, every time your cells divide. The pairing rules act like a safety net, ensuring that when one strand is copied, the other follows effortlessly. If a mistake appears, your body has caretakers ready to repair it, patching the story so that the rhythm continues unbroken. It's a level of precision no human machine has yet matched. Still, for all its structure, DNA is not a rigid thing. It bends, it responds, it breathes. under certain conditions it can twist a little differently, forming other shapes. Most of the time it rests in the classic B-form helix, that graceful right-handed spiral we know so well. But sometimes it shortens into a tighter A-form, or flips into a left-handed version called zDNA. You might imagine zDNA as the rebellious cousin at a family reunion, still part of the same family, just with a wilder rhythm. Scientists are still learning what these forms mean, but it seems even at the smallest scale, life enjoys a bit of improvisation. So tonight, as you breathe slowly, you can think of yourself as a song written from these 4 notes, looping and layering across trillions of cells. Each A, each T, each C and each G hums in quiet harmony, weaving your existence one molecular syllable at a time. You don't hear it, but it's always there. A soft vibration beneath thought, an eternal lullaby that says, continue. And as you drift closer to rest, you might smile at the idea that every atom in you, right now, is reading the same old text, a story written long before you were born, still adding new verses, one gentle turn of the spiral at a time. From here, the story opens into the quiet wonder of the spiral itself, the elegant twist that gives DNA its strength, its memory and its music. The shape is simple yet sacred, 2 ribbons of sugar and phosphate winding together, joined by rungs made of those 4 familiar letters, A joining with T, C joining with G, each pair linked by invisible threads of attraction. If you could see it, really see it, you might think of it as a staircase built of moonlight, climbing not upward but inward, toward the centre of what makes you alive. For centuries, no one knew what this structure looked like. The double helix lived in mystery, hidden in the quiet interiors of cells, unseen even by the first microscopes. People understood heredity. Farmers saw that traits passed from parent to child, that certain crops bred true, that some colours or shapes reappeared generation after generation. But no one knew where the instructions lived. They imagined an essence, a spark, a spirit. The idea of a molecule carrying memory was still too strange, too beautiful to seem real. Then, one winter in the early 1950s, light met matter in just the right way. A young scientist named Rosalind Franklin aimed X-rays at crystallized fibers of DNA, capturing an image that would change how humanity understood itself. On the photographic plate, the light scattered into a pattern of crosses, a ghostly X that revealed the truth. DNA was a helix, a spiral folded in perfect mathematical grace. That image, known as Photo 51, became the missing piece that allowed others to build the first 3-dimensional model. The discovery was not without controversy, but its consequence was universal. For the first time, we saw the architecture of life's language, and what a structure it was. Strong yet supple, simple yet infinite. Each spiral turn spans about 10 steps, everyone composed of base pairs connected by delicate hydrogen bonds. Those bonds are individually weak, but together they form a fortress of flexibility, strong enough to endure billions of cell divisions, yet gentle enough to allow the strands to unzip when new life needs to be written. It's nature's perfect compromise. Security without rigidity, movement without chaos. If you could hold a strand of DNA, it would be far thinner than a spider's silk. Yet if it were magnified large enough to grasp, it would glimmer, translucent, soft, shimmering like a ribbon under deep ocean light. Its surface is alive with rhythm, the repeating sugar and phosphate backbone like the rails of a spiral ladder, the bases forming steps of colourless glass. Those rails run in opposite directions, one side upward, one side downward, mirroring each other like twin streams of water swirling around a rock. Scientists call them anti-parallel strands, but we might think of them more simply as partners walking opposite paths, yet always together. When your cells divide, and they do so every moment, quietly, invisibly, the spiral unzips along its centre. Each side becomes a guide for the other, matching A with T and C with G, until two perfect copies emerge, ready to continue the story. Imagine a scroll that copies itself the moment you begin to read it. Imagine every word writing its reflection as your eyes pass over the page. That's what your DNA does, constantly, without effort, without pause. And yet even this precision is poetic, because the shape of DNA is not just a way to fit information neatly, it's also the key to life's choreography. The twist gives stability, the spacing gives rhythm, the regularity allows enzymes to move along it like trains following a track. You might picture these enzymes as quiet caretakers sliding through your cells, scanning for errors, making gentle corrections. A single cell carries thousands of these molecular proofreaders, ensuring that your spiral song continues, note for note. The design is so efficient that it has lasted billions of years without needing revision. From the simplest bacteria to the tallest redwood, every living thing follows the same basic pattern. Two strands entwined, reading one another's reflections. The variations are endless, but the melody remains constant. Even in the wild improvisations of evolution, the double helix never changes its tune. Sometimes, under unusual conditions, the spiral reshapes itself. It can tighten into a shorter, more compact form. Scientists call this the A-form, or it can flip its direction entirely, forming a left-handed version called Z-DNA. You might imagine the Z-shape as the jazzy cousin in the family, a little rebellious, a little unpredictable, but still part of the same symphony. These alternative forms may help regulate when and how certain genes are expressed, tiny shifts in shape that change which notes are played. It's as if the molecule itself can improvise, adjusting its rhythm to match the needs of the moment. All of this, the pairing, the spiral, the flexibility, turns what could have been mere chemistry into something close to art. The helix doesn't just carry data, it carries grace. Its geometry protects what matters most, the story of how to make life, how to keep it, how to share it. And it does so not through force, but through balance. A perfect conversation between strength and surrender. You might find it comforting to know that this same spiral is at work in you right now, weaving and unweaving, twisting and restoring. Every second, millions of these molecules open and close inside you, like the slow breathing of a sleeping forest. Each coil remembers the past and prepares the future. Each turn writes a reminder that you're both fragile and enduring, both fleeting and infinite. The next time you see a seashell with a perfect spiral, or the swirl of cream in a cup of tea, you might recognize the same pattern. Nature repeats her favorites. Spirals appear in galaxies, in whirlpools, in the unfurling of ferns, and in the quiet molecules of your blood. It's a shape that knows how to last, how to hold meaning without holding still. Even at the smallest scale, the universe prefers curves over corners, rhythm over rigidity. So as you drift deeper into this calm, perhaps you can picture that helix inside you, not as a distant abstraction, but as something tangible and alive. Two delicate ribbons endlessly turning, writing the music of your existence. O with T, C with G, the same pairs, the same pattern, over and over, yet never repetitive. Like waves meeting the shore, familiar but always new. And through it all, the spiral keeps singing, softly, steadily, the ancient song of life that every cell still remembers. The path now carries us deeper into the story, where the long spiral of DNA must learn to live inside the smallest of spaces. 2 meters of delicate thread folded into a single cell's tiny heart. It sounds impossible, like fitting a river into a teacup. And yet, every cell in your body performs this feat with effortless grace, every second of every day. To understand how, we need to step quietly into the art of organization, the way nature turns chaos into harmony, how she folds the infinite without tearing the page. Imagine you are looking down at that long, shimmering ribbon of DNA. It cannot float loose. It would tangle and knot itself hopelessly. Instead, the molecule winds around tiny protein spools called histones. You might picture them as small wooden reels in an old sewing kit, each one holding the story in neat, careful loops. Around each spool, the DNA wraps 1.5 times before moving on to the next, forming a pattern scientists once called beads on a string. These beads, clusters of DNA wrapped around histones, are known as nucleosomes. They are the first step in the great folding dance. If we could listen closely, perhaps we'd hear the faint sound of rustling pages as these nucleosomes twist and bend, looping again and again into higher levels of structure. Some sections fold tightly, forming dense fibres. Others remain loose and open, ready to be read. It's a living library that knows when to shelve a book and when to leave it open on the desk. The open regions, light and airy, are called euchromatin, the active parts of the genome, always available for transcription, for reading. The tightly packed sections are heterochromatin, closed volumes, their words sealed away for safekeeping. One could think of them as old journals stored carefully in a cabinet, still important but not meant for everyday browsing. This balance between open and closed, between flexibility and order, allows the cell to function without chaos. When a particular recipe is needed, say, for a protein that helps digest food or repair a broken cell wall, the chromatin gently unwinds at that spot, letting enzymes read the code. Once the job is done, it rolls itself up again, tidy and quiet. The process repeats endlessly, as if the molecule were breathing. Inhale, unwind, exhale, fold again. The entire collection of your DNA is called your genome, a word that carries both scale and intimacy. Inside each nucleus, that small round centre of the cell, this genome is divided into individual sections called chromosomes. You might have seen their classic shape in a textbook, the graceful X floating in a sea of light. But that image shows them only at one special moment, just before a cell divides. Most of the time, your chromosomes are not X-shaped at all. They exist as gentle loops and threads, tangled and yet somehow never snarled. Like a drawer of silk ribbons perfectly arranged by an invisible hand. When the time comes for a cell to divide, something extraordinary happens. Each long strand duplicates itself, then coils more tightly, packing together until the X form appears. Two identical arms joined at the centre, preparing to part ways. One copy will travel into each new cell, ensuring that both inherit the full library of life. The choreography is flawless, performed billions of times across your body without error. If you could watch it in motion, you might think of it as a cosmic ballet performed inside a single drop of water. Humans have 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. One set comes from your mother, the other from your father, each carrying a half of your genetic story. Together, they form the blueprint of your being. 22 of those pairs handle the universal duties of building and maintaining the body, while the last pair, the sex chromosomes, help shape whether your body develops male or female traits. In most women, that pair is 2 X's, elegant and symmetrical. In most men, it's 1 X and 1 Y, a pairing of difference that nonetheless works in perfect coordination. These are small details of great consequence, echoes of evolution's long experimentation with balance and variety. But here's something remarkable. While nearly every cell in your body carries the same DNA, they do not all read it the same way. Your brain cell and your liver cell hold the same library, yet they live entirely different lives. The difference lies in which chapters are opened and which remain closed, a form of molecular specialization that defines the diversity of tissues and functions. It's as if every cell were handed the complete encyclopedia of you, but each chooses only the pages that match its vocation. One becomes a messenger of thought, another a keeper of toxins, another a builder of muscle and movement. How does a cell know which parts to read? That guidance comes from chemical notes left along the DNA, tiny signals attached to the histones or the DNA itself marking which sections should stay silent and which should speak. These marks form part of what scientists call the epigenome, the layer of life on top of the genome. But you might think of it more softly, as a collection of bookmarks, sticky notes, and folded corners placed throughout the text. Each cell has its own set, defining what story it will tell. Around these bookmarks, teams of molecular caretakers work without rest. There are the chromatin remodelers, enzymes that open and close sections like gentle librarians returning books to their shelves. There are repair crews that patrol for damage, fixing tears or replacing missing letters. There are scaffolding proteins that hold the loops in place, ensuring that one chapter doesn't slip into another. Together they maintain an order so intricate, so peaceful, that we often forget it's happening at all. Sometimes, though, the system falters. A misplaced fold or an overzealous remodeler can lead to confusion in the script. Genes meant to be silent might wake up, while others that should sing may go quiet. These small disruptions can ripple outward, sometimes leading to illness. Cancer, for instance, often begins with such misfolding or miscommunication. A section of DNA that forgets when to stop dividing, a page read out of sequence. Yet even in these errors, the principle remains. Life's architecture is an ongoing act of folding and refolding, of balancing openness and restraint. You might not feel it, but right now, inside you, this choreography continues. Every moment, every breath, your DNA is winding and unwinding, revealing a passage here, tucking away a page there. It's the soundless turning of pages in the oldest book you'll ever carry. And as the night deepens around you, it's comforting to know that within you, order is quietly holding back chaos, one elegant fold at a time. Our quiet exploration now turns to the shelves themselves, the chromosomes, those long volumes of folded code that hold your entire genetic library. They're not static objects, but living manuscripts, constantly copied, repaired, and read by invisible caretakers inside your cells. If you could step inside the nucleus of one of your cells, you might find yourself in a circular library without walls, where every strand of DNA rests like a glowing thread, coiled, suspended, and alive. Imagine for a moment that you could hold one of these chromosomes in your hand. It would be far too small to see, yet within its folds lies a world larger than imagination. Each chromosome is a single continuous molecule of DNA, one long sentence, 3 billion letters spread across 23 paired volumes. They differ in length and in the stories they tell, but together they form your complete encyclopedia of life. You have 46 in total, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father. Like two sets of books, one inherited from each side of your family, they blend into a single edition that is you. When a cell isn't dividing, the chromosomes are relaxed, fine threads of chromatin drifting softly through the nucleus like strands of mist. They are accessible and flexible, allowing the cell to read whichever passages it needs at any moment. But as soon as the cell prepares to divide, something magical happens. The chromatin begins to coil tighter and tighter, wrapping again and again until it becomes thick enough to see under a microscope. It's at this point that the classic X shape appears, an image so familiar it's often mistaken for how chromosomes always look. In truth, that shape is a fleeting moment, captured in the act of renewal. Each side of that X is an identical copy of the other, connected in the middle by a narrow bridge. One copy will travel into the new cell, while the other remains in the original, a perfect handoff, ensuring that both cells inherit the same library. The precision is breathtaking. Billions of letters transferred without losing a single sentence. You might think of it as two librarians dividing a collection, each taking one copy of every book and not a single volume misplaced. Among those 46 chromosomes, 2 play a special role in shaping biological sex, the X and the Y. Most women carry 2 X chromosomes, a pair that mirrors each other like twin moons. Most men carry one X and one Y, an asymmetrical duet that still performs in harmony. These small differences ripple outward into the architecture of life, affecting development, hormones, and certain patterns of inheritance. Yet beyond those distinctions, the remaining 44 chromosomes are shared by all humans, regardless of who we are or where we come from. The same blueprints, the same scaffolds, the same ancient design. Each chromosome carries thousands of genes, fragments of instruction that together choreograph the building of a human being. But the genes themselves occupy only a tiny portion of the entire structure. The rest, once dismissed as junk, is now understood to be deeply involved in organisation and timing. Some regions act like bookmarks, ensuring that the right passages are opened at the right moment. Others hold switches that can activate or silence nearby genes, guiding when and where a message is read. Still others contain the ghosts of ancient viruses, fragments of long-ago infections that found a permanent home in our genome. They are silent now mostly, but some still whisper faintly, their presence a reminder that even our deepest identity is a collaboration with history. At the tips of each chromosome lie protective caps called telomeres, repeating stretches of code that act like the plastic ends of shoelaces, preventing the molecule from fraying. Each time a cell divides, the telomeres shorten slightly, marking the quiet passage of time at a molecular scale. When they become too short, the cell retires, unable to divide again. In a way, your telomeres are the slow metronome of your life's song, counting out divisions like heartbeats in the background. Some cells, like those in your skin or blood, divide frequently and lose their telomere length quickly. Others, like neurons, rarely divide at all, preserving their length across a lifetime. The balance between renewal and stability is what allows you to grow, heal, and endure. The nucleus, that tiny round room where all of this takes place, is both archive and command center. Inside, the chromosomes don't just float aimlessly. They occupy distinct territories. Each has its own quiet corner, a familiar place it tends to return to after every division. Like a library where each volume has its shelf, the organisation is precise and personal. This arrangement even changes slightly between cell types, a pattern that reflects what each cell needs to do. In a muscle cell, for instance, genes for strength and contraction sit near the surface, open and active, while those that govern other processes remain tucked away. In a neuron, the sections responsible for memory and communication take centre stage. Every nucleus is like a unique reading room, arranged for its particular purpose. When scientists first mapped the human genome, they were astonished to learn how little of it codes directly for proteins, only about 1 to 2%. The rest was once dismissed as meaningless filler, but we now understand it as a vast regulatory landscape. These non-coding regions are like the punctuation marks, the spaces, the rhythm of a sentence. Without them, the story would be unreadable. Some act as anchors for the folding structure, others as timing cues for gene activity. Together they create an invisible architecture of rhythm and restraint, the poetry of silence between words. It's strange to think that such stillness and order are maintained by forces so small. Within the nucleus, proteins and enzymes move like courteous librarians, guiding, folding, repairing. Some carry messages from other parts of the cell, directing which sections of DNA to open next. Others arrive to mend a broken bond or replace a damaged letter. These are not chaotic collisions, but coordinated gestures, a slow waltz of molecules under the soft glow of chemical light. Even in their quiet efficiency, these processes carry emotion, not in a human sense, of course, but in the way they mirror intention, care, and memory. There's patience in the way the chromosomes fold and unfold. There's generosity in the way they share copies of themselves. There's trust in the balance between openness and closure. It's as though the architecture of life is built on an ancient faith, that even the smallest parts will remember how to stay whole. If you pause for a moment, you can imagine all of this happening inside you right now. Trillions of tiny libraries, each one humming softly with activity. Within them, the same story being read again and again, each line written in the gentle rhythm of A joining with T and C joining with G. The letters pair and separate, wind and unwind, maintaining their balance like a universe contained in a single breath. The chromosomes, those quiet custodians of identity, keep watch over it all, ensuring that your story continues, word by word, fold by fold. And as you listen now, perhaps you can feel a small comfort in knowing that within you, order never truly ends. It simply shifts shape, like light in water, folding, reflecting, returning to calm. Inside the smallest of spaces, life has found a way to keep its pages open. The trail of clues leads us gently into the next part of the story, into the pages themselves. If the chromosomes are the shelves, then the genes are the stories tucked within them. Each one holds a fragment of instruction, a paragraph or even a sentence in the greater novel of you. Some of those sentences are short and clear, like a simple recipe. Others are long, layered, and filled with subplots. Together they make the script from which your body reads its lines every day. A gene is not a physical object you could pick up and hold. It's more like a pattern, a length of DNA whose sequence spells out how to build something useful. That something is usually a protein, a molecule that folds and bends into shape to form your hair, your enzymes, your muscles, and the very signals that let your thoughts move between neurons. You might think of genes as instructions for tools, and proteins as the tools themselves, quiet workers that give the cell its abilities. In total, the human genome contains about 20,000 to 25,000 of these genes. It sounds like a lot, yet it makes up only about 1 or 2% of all your DNA. The rest of your genetic material, the vast 98%, does not directly code for proteins at all. For decades, scientists didn't understand what that meant. They called it junk DNA, thinking it was leftover material from evolution's earlier drafts. But time revealed a more poetic truth. Much of that so-called junk is actually the punctuation, the spaces, and the rhythm that make the rest of the story readable. Some of these non-coding regions act as signals that decide when a gene should start speaking and when it should fall silent. Others help fold the DNA in the right way, bringing distant genes close together so that they can cooperate. There are even parts that serve as the footprints of ancient visitors, the remnants of viruses that once invaded our ancestors' cells and then never fully left. Over generations, those viral sequences became part of us, woven into the story so tightly that we can't tell where the foreign ends and the familiar begins. Many of those sequences are harmless now, like quiet ghosts from our biological past. But a few still play subtle roles, influencing how genes are turned on or off. The story of life, it seems, has always been open to collaboration. Every gene has a beginning and an end, a place where its message starts, and a signal that tells the cell where to stop reading. Between those points lies a string of letters, each group of 3 forming a tiny word. These words, called codons by scientists, though we can imagine them as little syllables, each correspond to one specific ingredient, one building block used to make a protein. When the cell reads a gene, it reads 3 letters at a time, spelling out a sentence of molecular instructions. It all begins with transcription, a gentle process that copies the DNA's message into a more mobile form called RNA. You might imagine the original DNA as a master book kept safe in a locked archive, and RNA as the handwritten note that a librarian makes for someone who needs to use the information. The copying enzyme, a patient worker named RNA polymerase, glides along the DNA like a careful scribe, writing a temporary version of the message using a slightly different ink. Wherever DNA writes a T, RNA writes a U instead, uracil, a soft substitution that lets the copy stand apart from the original. The result is a strand of messenger RNA, a portable script ready to be carried out of the nucleus and into the main chamber of the cell. Once there, another quiet miracle begins. Tiny factories called ribosomes attach themselves to the messenger RNA and start to read it, 3 letters at a time. Each word tells the ribosome which amino acid, one of 20 basic building blocks, to bring next. Helper molecules ferry those ingredients in like artisans delivering pieces for an intricate mosaic. Slowly, the protein begins to take shape, a chain folding into spirals and sheets until it becomes a distinct object, an enzyme, a hormone, a structural piece of your body. The process is precise but never rushed, like a craftsman shaping something delicate from glass. Sometimes the same gene can create different proteins depending on how the RNA copy is edited. This is called alternative splicing, though we might think of it more simply as rearranging paragraphs in a story to make a new meaning. The same collection of words, when ordered differently, can describe something completely new. This flexibility gives your cells a remarkable power to adapt, to vary, to improvise within the rules of the same script. All of this happens continuously and invisibly within you. Right now, as you listen, billions of your cells are reading and writing, copying and folding, producing the molecules that keep you alive. Enzymes working in your stomach, hemoglobin carrying oxygen in your blood, receptors catching signals in your brain. Every one of them began as a story written by DNA and transcribed into reality. You are quite literally a collection of sentences that learn to think. And yet, the genome is more than a machine. It's a chorus. Not all genes sing at once. Some remain quiet for years, waiting for a cue, a change in temperature, a signal from another cell, a moment of need. Others hum constantly, maintaining the simple rhythms that keep your body's lights on. Each cell has its own playlist, a specific set of songs it needs to play for its role. Skin cells perform their steady, protective tune. Nerve cells hum in long, complex patterns. Muscle cells beat out their rhythmic pulse. Together, they form a living symphony that you carry everywhere you go. Even silence matters in this orchestra. The non-coding DNA, once thought meaningless, often acts as a conductor, a silent presence ensuring that the right sections rise and fall at the right time. The pauses are part of the music, and somewhere in that grand performance there's a theme that is unmistakably yours, a melody shaped by ancestry, refined by experience, and still being written in every cell that divides. As you breathe softly now, you can imagine that within you, words are constantly being written and read, a gentle rustle of letters at the smallest scale. The script doesn't demand attention, it simply continues, calm and consistent. Every cell, every strand, every letter performs its part with grace. And while you drift toward rest, the living manuscript inside you keeps turning its pages, quietly ensuring that the story of you goes on. The story now drifts into one of the most delicate scenes inside every cell, the act of copying when information becomes motion. If DNA is the original book written in the deepest library of your body, then transcription is the moment someone quietly opens that book and begins to take notes. It happens endlessly, invisibly and almost tenderly. You could think of each cell as a tiny monastery, filled with silent scribes, each one copying the words of life by candlelight. The scribe in this story is a molecule called RNA polymerase, but you don't need to remember the name. It's enough to imagine it as a careful hand tracing each letter with infinite patience. This little enzyme glides along the DNA, separating its 2 spiraling ribbons and reading one side as a template. Wherever the DNA writes the letter A, the scribe writes U for uracil, the special mark used only in RNA. When the DNA writes T, the scribe writes A. When it writes C, the scribe writes G. And when it writes G, the scribe writes C. Each letter finds its partner. Each mark has its rhythm. The code becomes a gentle translation from one form of language to another, where the DNA script transformed into a message that can travel, Once this copy is complete, the strand of messenger RNA, sometimes called mRNA, drifts away from the DNA like a note leaving the hands of the writer. It carries with it all the information needed to build a protein, one of the many kinds of molecules that keep you alive. But this note cannot stay in the library. The nucleus is a sacred space, too crowded and delicate for construction work. So the message is escorted through tiny doorways in the nuclear wall, pores that act like guarded gates, and emerges into the larger chamber of the cell where the building begins. Waiting there are ribosomes, small round factories made of proteins and RNA themselves. You can picture them as little workshops floating in a sea of fluid. When a ribosome catches a strand of messenger RNA, it clamps onto it gently and begins to read. Every 3 letters on that RNA strand form a small word, a code for one specific building block. The ribosome moves along word by word, summoning tiny carriers to bring each ingredient in the right order. Those carriers are molecules of transfer RNA, helpers that hold one building block at one end and match it to the right code on the message. It's as if the builders consult a set of instructions written in triplets. 3 letters to call for one piece, 3 letters to add the next. The building blocks themselves are called amino acids, about 20 different kinds. They link together in chains hundreds of units long, like beads being strung into a necklace. The order of those beads determines everything. What shape the finished protein will take, what job it will perform, whether it will form part of your hair, or carry oxygen in your blood, or spark an electrical signal in your brain. Each step is precise. Each connection is checked and rechecked before the ribosome moves on. You might think of it as a slow, graceful weaving rather than an assembly line, the steady creation of something beautiful and functional at once. When the chain is complete, it folds in on itself. The folds are not random, they're guided by the chemistry of the amino acids, by the way certain regions attract or repel water, or fit together like puzzle pieces. Sometimes the protein needs help folding. Special molecules called chaperones guard it as it takes shape, making sure it doesn't twist the wrong way. A finished protein might resemble a small sculpture, coiled, curved, and perfectly arranged. From there it travels to where it's needed, perhaps to repair a membrane, to carry a signal, or to become part of a structure that gives your cells strength. All of this happens faster than you can imagine, yet the tone is never rushed. Each step occurs in the hush of chemical precision, like a steady heartbeat. Thousands of different messenger strands are being read at once in each of your cells, yet they never collide, never lose the rhythm. The balance is astonishing, a harmony of motion that feels almost musical. Some scientists even describe the ribosome's movements as having a tempo, like a conductor tapping the baton before each addition to the chain. But as beautiful as this system is, it isn't without its improvisations. The same RNA message can sometimes be read differently, producing slight variations of the same protein. In some cases, a section of the message is skipped, or 2 sections are joined in a new way. These changes aren't mistakes, they're creative edits. Life loves variety. This process, known as alternative splicing, allows a single gene to create many different proteins, different versions of the same theme. Imagine a poet rearranging a few lines of a stanza to see what new meaning might emerge. The essence is the same, but the feeling shifts. The finished proteins then travel outward, some staying nearby, others sent to distant parts of the cell. Some will fold into membranes, forming the boundaries that hold you together. Others will act as enzymes, catalysts that speed up the countless reactions that make life possible. Still, others will become signals, drifting between cells to carry information, instructions to grow, to rest, to repair. Each protein knows its destination, guided by subtle tags placed on it during its creation, like a letter addressed to a specific house. The scale of it all is humbling. Billions of messages, billions of molecules, all made, folded and delivered without noise or confusion. If you close your eyes, you can imagine the cell as a glowing city at night. The nucleus at its centre is a library of light where the scribes work. Around it, messenger strands move like couriers through quiet streets, carrying messages to factories that hum gently in the dark. Everywhere, the sense of purpose is calm and continuous. Nothing is wasted, nothing forgotten. Even the discarded pieces of RNA, the scraps trimmed away during editing, are recycled or used as signals themselves. And through it all, your body keeps its rhythm. The notes of DNA are copied, the songs of RNA are sung, and the instruments of protein take form. You don't feel it happening, but it's constant, like the steady surf on a faraway beach. Even now, as you breathe, your cells are writing, translating, folding, and shaping the story that allows you to be. The same choreography that built the first life on Earth continues inside you, unbroken, perfect in its quiet repetition. You might find it peaceful to know that every thought, every heartbeat, every dream relies on this soft movement of letters becoming form. The candlelight never goes out, the scribes never stop, the library of your being stays open all through the night. The path now leads us to something subtler, the music that decides when each gene speaks and when it falls silent. Because not every page in the grand library of your body is open at once. If it were, chaos would reign. Cells would waste energy copying notes that no one needs, building proteins with no purpose. So, nature invented a quiet system of timing, of cues, of restraint, a conductor for the orchestra of life. You might imagine your genome as a vast symphony hall. Inside 20,000 instruments, your genes sit waiting, each capable of playing a part in the song of you. But they don't play together. Some perform their melody only in the heart, others only in the brain or the skin. Some are active for a moment during childhood, and then fall silent forever. Each has a time and place. The result isn't noise, but harmony. A masterpiece performed without pause since the moment your first cell began to divide. At the centre of this coordination are the transcription factors, molecules that drift through the nucleus like gentle hands opening and closing books. When a cell receives a signal, perhaps from another cell or from the outside world, these factors find the right page, attach themselves to the DNA, and invite it to speak. Sometimes they recruit helpers that unwind the DNA slightly, allowing the RNA scribes to begin their work. Other times they tighten the spiral, closing the chapter so the story rests. The cell listens to the needs of the moment and adjusts its volume accordingly. It might help to think of this process as a set of dimmer switches rather than on-off buttons. Genes aren't simply awake or asleep, they hum at varying intensities. The heart might need a flood of energy proteins during exercise, but only a soft trickle while you rest. A neuron may whisper one kind of message when you're calm, and another when you're afraid. These subtle changes happen second by second, shaping the flow of your existence. Even your mood, your diet, and your environment can shift the tempo of your molecular music. This is where life's elegance truly shows, in the way it adapts. The DNA inside you doesn't change much over a lifetime, but the way it is read changes constantly. That flexibility is what allows you to respond to the world without rewriting your story from scratch. Imagine the same orchestra, but each performance is unique. The score remains the same, yet the interpretation, the tempo, the tone, the pauses, differs depending on the night. Sometimes the environment outside the cell can send signals inward that ripple through this process. Light striking your eyes in the morning triggers proteins that tell certain genes it's time to wake, to produce hormones that align your body's rhythm with the rising sun. When you eat, chemical messengers carry the message of food, encouraging some genes to store energy and others to repair. When you're under stress, a flood of signals moves through your body, adrenaline, cortisol, a symphony of urgency, and in response, hundreds of genes change their expression, turning on defenses or slowing non-essential functions. Once calm returns, the notes quiet again. This ability to shift has been shaped by billions of years of survival. Long before there were humans, ancient cells learned to sense light, temperature, and nourishment, to open certain genetic pages when conditions were right, and to close them when danger approached. The system has been refined ever since, becoming the language by which your body listens to the world. You're not merely shaped by your environment, you are in constant conversation with it. Some of the finest examples of this conversation are found in how the body handles challenge and endurance. Think of the way muscles strengthen after exercise. When you run, small fibers in your muscles experience stress, tiny tears that call for repair. Your cells respond by activating genes that build stronger fibers. Even after you rest, those genes stay attentive, making future repairs faster. It's a form of learning, written not in memory, but in molecules. The same principle applies when your immune system meets a virus. Certain genes awaken to build antibodies, and once the battle ends, a few remain on standby, their pages marked for next time. Even your thoughts can leave traces in this molecular language. Chronic stress or fear, when stretched over time, can influence which genes stay active. Conversely, moments of calm, gratitude, and rest can encourage others to sing, genes that nurture repair, balance, and growth. The idea that the mind and the genome speak to each other isn't mystical. It's simply biology learning to listen to its own rhythms, and not every note comes from within. Some of the genes in your body respond to cues from the world you share with others. Sunlight on the skin activates the script for vitamin D. The scent of food can awaken digestive pathways. The presence of another person can change hormonal melodies, stirring genes that influence bonding, empathy, or alertness. We are, in every sense, social at the molecular level. Your DNA is not an island. It's part of an ongoing duet between your inner world and the wider one. To keep all of this balanced, the cell relies on a system of checks and counterpoints. When too many genes try to speak at once, another set of regulators moves in, calming the chorus. When silence lasts too long, signals arrive to reopen the pages. It's an endless conversation, not unlike breathing. A constant rise and fall, activity and rest. If you could shrink down small enough to observe it, you might see waves of expression rippling through the nucleus like the tides, rhythmic and purposeful. And yet, for all its complexity, the result feels simple when you experience it from the outside. You wake, eat, move, think, feel, and sleep. Each of these ordinary moments a symphony of genes playing in perfect timing. The reason you can heal from a wound, adapt to a cold night, or remember a face is that your genetic orchestra never stops rehearsing. It's always learning, always responding, always ready to perform the next measure of your life's song. Now, as you listen, consider this. The melody of your genes isn't fixed. Every breath you take, every choice, every encounter with the world slightly adjusts its phrasing. You're both the musician and the instrument, the conductor and the listener, living inside the music you create. The same four letters, A, T, C, and G, are your notes, and they play endlessly, rearranging themselves into the harmony that is uniquely you. So, as the night deepens, perhaps take comfort in knowing that even now your inner symphony continues. Somewhere within you, tiny conductors raise their batons, and the song begins again, soft, continuous, full of balance and grace. A with T, C with G, 4 letters, one everlasting rhythm. As the story turns another page, we find that even the most careful scribe sometimes lets a small typo slip through. In the library of life, those gentle imperfections are known as mutations. The tiny changes that appear when DNA is copied, read, or repaired. You might imagine them as faint smudges on a handwritten note, a skipped letter, or a word written twice. At first glance, they seem like mistakes, but in truth, they are how nature experiments, revises, and dreams of something new. Every time a cell divides, its DNA must be duplicated, letter by letter, line by line. The caretakers inside your body perform this task with astonishing precision, matching each A with a T and each C with a G. Yet once in a while, perhaps once in a billion letters, the process wavers. A single letter might be written differently. Instead of A with T, it might become A with G. One syllable out of place, one spark of difference. That single change is called a point mutation, a microscopic alteration that, depending on where it happens, can make no difference at all or can subtly shift the course of life itself. Some point mutations are like invisible edits. They change a letter but not the meaning of the word. Others adjust the word slightly, altering the protein that will be built from it. Sometimes the result is neutral, sometimes it's useful, sometimes it causes trouble. One of the most famous examples lives in the story of blood, the sickle cell mutation. In one version of the gene that builds hemoglobin, a single letter is swapped. The normal sequence might call for one amino acid, one building block, but the altered version asks for another. The result is a protein that folds differently, curving the red blood cells into a crescent shape. It sounds unfortunate, and in certain conditions it is, leading to the illness known as sickle cell disease. But that same small change, when inherited in just one copy, offers protection against malaria, a survival advantage in places where that disease once shaped entire populations. A single letter, both burden and blessing. Not all mutations are so visible. Some are insertions, an extra letter slipped into the text, or deletions, where one is quietly lost. When these changes alter the spacing of the genetic words, the whole sentence shifts. The cell, reading 3 letters at a time, suddenly finds itself out of rhythm. A phrase that once made sense becomes nonsense. Scientists call this a frame shift, but you might think of it as skipping a letter in a sentence. The cat ran becomes tekata-an. The meaning falls apart, yet even these errors have lessons to teach. They remind us that information, and life itself, depends on rhythm, spacing, and context as much as on the letters themselves. Larger changes can happen too. Entire paragraphs of DNA can be rearranged, a section copied twice, another lost, or 2 fragments swapped between chromosomes. Sometimes whole pages are exchanged, bringing distant genes into new neighbourhoods where they begin to interact in unexpected ways. You could picture it as 2 books of poetry accidentally bound together, their lines interleaving until something entirely new is born. Most of these rearrangements pass unnoticed, their effects minor or neutral, but a few open the door to innovation, new traits, new abilities, the slow unfurling of evolution's imagination. Many of the differences between species began with such small rearrangements. Somewhere deep in time, a single duplication might have given rise to an extra copy of a gene, freeing one version to change while the other stayed faithful to its original role. Over eons, those changes accumulated, producing new colours, new senses, new forms of life. Even your own ability to digest milk as an adult, something many mammals cannot do, began as a mutation, a small adjustment in the switch that controls a particular gene. It allowed humans to use dairy as food, and that one quiet shift shaped cultures, migrations, and economies across the world. The truth is that your genome, that seemingly stable manuscript, is full of these revisions. It carries millions of tiny differences, passed down from ancestors who lived, loved, and survived through chance and adaptation. Most of these changes are neutral, letters that differ but mean the same thing. Some make your hair curl a little, or your skin respond differently to sunlight. Others shape your metabolism, your sleep, your sensitivity to temperature or taste. The language of your DNA is always evolving, even when you're unaware of it. Of course, not all mutations are gentle. Some disrupt essential instructions, leading to illness or instability. Ultraviolet light, for instance, can strike a cell and cause a bond between two letters to twist out of place. Chemicals in smoke or pollution can slip between the rungs of the double helix, distorting its shape. Cosmic rays, the distant whispers of dying stars, sometimes strike the body and leave tiny molecular scars. Yet even these missteps are part of the balance. Reminders that life endures not by avoiding damage, but by learning how to repair it. Inside you, whole teams of molecular caretakers work as editors and proofreaders. They patrol your DNA like quiet librarians with soft brushes, checking each page for smudges and fixing them before they spread. Enzymes slide along the spiral, feeling for irregularities, replacing broken pieces, sealing gaps. Some specialize in patching single letters, others in mending long stretches that were mistakenly copied. The process is so constant and graceful that you'll never notice it happening, and when the damage cannot be repaired, the cell itself may decide to rest, to remove its flawed copy from the collection for the sake of the whole. Even at this level, life has a sense of integrity. It's easy to think of mutations as flaws, but perhaps it's kinder to think of them as variations in handwriting, small differences that give individuality to the text. Without them, life would stagnate, frozen in perfection. The diversity of everything we see, every flower, feather and face, began as a typo in the great script of existence. Mutation is how nature edits her poems, how she improvises her next verse. She makes small adjustments, most invisible, some transformative, all part of the same endless experiment. So, as you lie here tonight, you might take a quiet comfort in knowing that even perfection needs its imperfections. Your cells, right now, are copying and revising, maintaining their fidelity but allowing space for variation. The story of life isn't one of flawless repetition, it's one of resilience, adaptation, and the beauty of surprise. From the faintest spelling change to the grandest reshuffling of chapters, every mutation is a reminder that creation and correction walk hand in hand. The spiral of DNA with its paired letters, A with T, C with G, keeps writing, sometimes exactly, sometimes with a pause or a stumble, and in those pauses and stumbles the world finds new rhythms to dance to. From the gentle rhythm of copying and revision, our story now drifts towards something larger, how those small imperfections become the seeds of possibility. Every living thing carries them, quietly, like freckles on the skin of the universe. Mutations, those faint spelling changes in the book of life, are not just errors to be repaired. They are invitations, ways for nature to explore her own imagination. Without them, the story of life would read like a single unbroken sentence. With them, it becomes a symphony of variations. If you could travel backward in time and watch life unfold, you'd see these changes scatter across generations like sparks in the dark. Some fade instantly, some glow brightly and vanish, and a few take hold, passed from one life to another, reshaped and refined until they become part of what we call normal. That's how evolution writes, not with sudden inventions, but with countless quiet edits layered over deep time. Take, for example, a story hidden in something as ordinary as a glass of milk. Long ago, our distant ancestors, like most mammals, could digest milk only as infants. The ability came from a gene that produces an enzyme called lactase, a molecule that breaks down the sugar in milk. In adulthood, that gene normally dimmed its activity. It was no longer needed. But in certain human populations, a tiny mutation in the gene's control region kept the enzyme switched on for life. Those who carried this change could drink milk as adults without discomfort, a small advantage in cold climates where fresh food was scarce. Over generations, the trait spread. Today, when you pour milk into your tea or eat cheese without thinking, you're tasting the result of that quiet genetic improvisation. One small change that rewrote the menu of history. Another story unfolds in the red cells of the blood, where the sickle cell mutation, the one we met before, demonstrates life's strange duality. 2 copies of that gene can bring illness, but 1 copy offers protection from malaria. In the regions of Africa where malaria once raged, that trade-off was worth it. Families who carried 1 copy of the altered gene were more likely to survive and pass it on. Nature, it seems, often balances beauty with cost. Every adaptation is a negotiation between advantage and risk. There are countless other examples hidden within us. A small variation in a single gene can make one person need less sleep than another, while another change might make someone more alert to danger or more resistant to cold. Each mutation is like a verse written in a regional dialect, slightly different, but still part of the same language. And when those differences accumulate over millennia, they give rise to the rich diversity we see in every species on Earth. The stripes on a zebra, the curve of a bird's beak, the range of human faces and voices, all are born from imperfection gently sculpted by time. But not every mutation begins as a gift. Some are born from hardship, from sunlight, radiation, chemicals, or the slow accumulation of wear that comes simply from being alive. The ultraviolet rays that warm your skin in the morning can also nudge the letters of DNA out of place, fusing 2 of them together. The oxygen you breathe while vital can sometimes rust the edges of your molecular pages. Even the act of copying itself leaves tiny fingerprints of imperfection. Yet through it all, your body remains calm, constantly tending to its script. Inside you, there are caretakers known as DNA repair enzymes, molecular editors that never sleep. Some specialize in proofreading, catching a wrong letter the moment it's written. Others patrol for damage caused by sunlight or toxins, carefully cutting out the flawed section and stitching in a corrected line. You might imagine them as quiet monks working by lamplight, reading the manuscript of your cells, repairing each crease and tear. They cannot catch every change, nor should they. If they did, evolution would grind to a halt. Life's strength comes from allowing a little uncertainty, a little wiggle in the pattern. Too much perfection, and the music stops. Even aging, that slow and familiar process, can be seen as a kind of story written in fading ink. Over the years, mutations accumulate in cells, tiny typos that gradually change how tissues behave. Some are harmless, others slow repair or cloud communication. Yet even this decline carries a kind of grace. It reminds us that life's beauty lies in motion, in constant rewriting. The script was never meant to stay pristine, it was meant to be lived. Somewhere within all of this is a quiet philosophy. That imperfection is not failure, but the price of possibility. Every new idea, every adaptation, every leap forward in evolution depends on something not going exactly as planned. The first eye, the first feather, the first beating heart. None of these were designed from scratch. They were improvisations, experiments that happened to work, refined and polished by countless generations afterward. Nature creates not by blueprint, but by persistence and patience. You might think of it as an artist repainting the same canvas, layer upon layer. Some strokes are deliberate, others accidental. The finished piece glows with depth because of its history, every colour beneath the surface contributing to the final hue. The same is true of you. You're a living masterpiece layered with ancestral edits, shaped by the successes and missteps of those who came before. And if all of this seems too grand to imagine, consider a simpler truth. Even tonight as you rest, this process continues. Your cells are copying DNA, some perfectly, some with the tiniest of variations. A molecule of light might strike your skin, leaving a new mark. A strand might break and be repaired in a slightly different pattern. These small changes are not threats. They are the quiet heartbeat of evolution, the way life ensures its story never grows dull. The next time you notice a freckle or see how no 2 leaves look exactly alike, remember that these are not flaws. They are the fingerprints of time, the proof that life is still experimenting, still writing, still brave enough to be imperfect. The spiral of DNA, pairing A with T and C with G, continues its endless dance, steady but never still. Every so often, it adds a note of surprise, a new letter, a shifted line, a variation that lets the song evolve. Without those tiny differences, the world would have no colour, no movement, no story. Perfection would be silence. It is the small mistakes, repeated over ages, that taught life to paint in every shade, to sculpt every form, to breathe, to dream. So if there's a message written in your DNA tonight, it might be this: do not fear imperfection. It's the handwriting of creation, the way the universe keeps learning to be alive. Our quiet exploration now turns to something both familiar and mysterious: how the story of life passes from one generation to the next. Every parent gives a portion of their library to their children, not through ink or paper, but through molecules, spirals of DNA carefully packed into tiny travelers called gametes, the egg and the sperm. When they meet, those two libraries merge, and a new volume begins. You are one of those volumes, a new edition of an ancient text, written with the same 4 letters, yet arranged in a way that has never been seen before. Each of your genes exist in pairs, 2 copies of the same recipe, one from your mother, one from your father. They're called alleles, and you can imagine them as 2 variations of the same dish. Perhaps one version adds a little spice, the other a touch of sweetness. The result is the balance between them, a blend that makes the flavour uniquely yours. Some alleles are stronger in expression, their voices carrying clearly in the molecular conversation. Others are gentler, quieter, waiting in the background. Scientists once named them dominant and recessive, though those words feel a little too rigid. In truth, it's more like mixing paint. Sometimes one colour takes over, sometimes they blend to create something entirely new. Let's picture an example. Suppose one parent's gene paints the eyes with brown pigment, while the other offers blue. In most cases, the darker shade prevails, because it comes from a recipe that makes more pigment, not because it's more important, just more generous. But sometimes, both colours whisper together, creating something in between: green, grey or hazel. It's the same in countless other traits: freckles, hair texture, height, even the curl of a smile. Inheritance is not a command, it's a negotiation. The process that makes this negotiation possible begins long before birth, in the formation of egg and sperm cells. Inside those cells, the number of chromosomes is cut in half, from 46 to 23, through a process called meiosis. You can think of it as a master librarian carefully dividing the shelves into 2 smaller collections. But this division is not simple duplication. During meiosis, the matching chromosomes, one from your mother's side, one from your father's, line up closely and sometimes swap pieces. A section from one may cross over to the other, mixing their information. It's as if 2 books were laid side by side and a few paragraphs were exchanged. The result is a brand new combination of pages, a remix of family history. This crossing over is one of the great creative acts in biology. It ensures that no 2 people, not even siblings, receive the same arrangement of their parents' genes. Each child is a mosaic of ancestry, the same ingredients, endlessly recombined. If you've ever wondered why your brother's hair is lighter, or your sister's face more like your grandmother's, this is why. Meiosis is nature's way of ensuring surprise. It shuffles the deck of life before every new hand is dealt. Once the egg and sperm meet, their chromosomes pair up again, restoring the full set. Each parent's contribution weaves into the other, letter by letter, creating the complete script for a new person. It's humbling to think that something as grand as identity begins as a single cell, carrying equal gifts from 2 lineages. The union doesn't just combine DNA, it combines history, geography, memory, all written in molecular form. Yet even after all this precision, randomness has its say. Sometimes small variations in how genes are copied or expressed can tilt the outcome one way or another. Identical twins who share nearly the same DNA still grow to have tiny differences in freckles, in personality, in thought. Environment, experience, and chance brush gentle strokes across the same genetic canvas, turning sameness into individuality. The inheritance of traits also follows subtler patterns than we once believed. Some genes influence many features at once, while others interact with their neighbours in intricate networks. A single variation might shape both your metabolism and your mood. Another might affect how your body handles caffeine, or how it responds to stress. It's less like a list of independent recipes, and more like a kitchen where every ingredient subtly alters the others. Even so, certain traits follow clearer lines through generations, like threads shining under candlelight. Maybe it's the dimple you see every time you smile, the same one your grandfather had, or the exact curve of your handwriting echoed from an ancestor you never met. Each of these details is a sentence passed down, intact enough to be recognised yet rewritten just enough to stay alive. The continuity is astonishing. Your body is made of stories that began long before you ever opened your eyes. And then there's the humour of inheritance, the small quirks that make families recognisable. Perhaps your aunt insists that you inherited your love of tea from her side, or that your quick temper is unmistakably from your father's. Scientists might call those observations anecdotal, but there's truth in them. Genes don't only shape anatomy, they can influence temperament, taste, and how we perceive the world. If your family shares a fondness for music or an instinct for storytelling, it may not just be nurture, it could be the echo of ancient rhythms humming in your DNA. There are, of course, exceptions, traits that skip generations, or combinations that appear out of nowhere. But even those surprises follow quiet logic. Sometimes, a recessive gene waits for another matching copy before revealing itself. Other times, a mutation appears spontaneously, adding a new twist to the lineage. Nature writes her genealogies with both consistency and creativity. The same alphabet, rearranged endlessly, produces the infinite diversity of life. When you trace your heritage through these molecular lines, it's impossible not to feel connected to parents, grandparents, and beyond, to people whose names may have been forgotten, but whose cells still whisper through your blood. Your very presence is proof that they lived and passed something on. You're not a random outcome, you're a continuation, a new expression of an ancient theme. So the next time you notice a familiar smile in a mirror, or catch yourself using the same gesture as someone long gone, remember this: the spiral of life inside you, pairing A with T and C with G, has carried that motion forward for centuries. You're both the author and the reader, the new verse written in an ongoing poem. And perhaps that's the quiet magic of inheritance. It's not about possession, but participation. Each generation adds a line, a tone, a hint of colour, and then passes it on. The song continues, slightly changed but always recognisable, humming softly through time. From the familiar warmth of family, the story now drifts farther back, far beyond living memory, into the silent distances of time where inheritance stretches past generations, past civilizations, into the dim blue of prehistory. The DNA inside you carries traces of journeys long before your own. It is both a diary and a map, written by ancestors who crossed mountains, oceans, and ages, each leaving quiet fingerprints that still glow faintly within your cells. You are, in a very real way, a collection of ancient travellers, their footsteps folded into the spiral that hums softly inside you. Every cell in your body holds this history, but one molecule in particular carries a record of a lineage so direct, it almost feels like time travel. It lives in your mitochondria, the tiny powerhouses that keep each cell alive, converting food and oxygen into the energy that fuels every heartbeat and thought. Unlike most of your DNA, which is kept safely in the nucleus, mitochondrial DNA floats separately, inside these small luminous organelles. It is inherited almost entirely from your mother. When an egg cell is fertilized, the mitochondria within the sperm do not stay. Only the mothers are passed on. That means your mitochondrial DNA, that small ring of code, connects you directly to an unbroken chain of mothers reaching back tens of thousands of years. Scientists sometimes call the common ancestor of all living maternal lines mitochondrial Eve. She wasn't the first woman, nor the only one alive at her time. She was simply the woman whose daughters' daughters' daughters continued in an unbroken line until today. Through her, and through countless unnamed mothers after her, you carry the spark of a lineage older than language, older even than memory. When you breathe, when your heart beats, the energy that powers those acts flows through engines built from her ancient design. The paternal side has its own echo. On the Y chromosome, the small companion to the X, there is another thread of unbroken inheritance. It passes from father to son, unchanged except for the smallest mutations that occur over centuries. These slow, steady changes allow scientists to trace paternal ancestry, connecting modern families to ancient tribes and migrations. The term for that shared father of all Y chromosomes is Y-chromosomal Adam. Like mitochondrial Eve, he was not the first man, but one whose genetic line endured while others eventually faded. The poetic symmetry of Eve and Adam doesn't mean they lived together or even in the same era. Their stories simply remind us that all humanity converges into the same web of origin. Beyond these single lines, maternal and paternal, your genome is a mosaic, a vast tapestry woven from many threads. As your ancestors moved across continents, they met, mingled, and exchanged fragments of DNA. Some of these fragments are surprisingly ancient. Within the double helix that winds inside your cells are traces of other human species, small genetic gifts left by encounters with Neanderthals in Europe and with Denisovans in Asia. Most of these traces are tiny, perhaps 1 or 2% of your genome, but they carry subtle influences, a variation in immunity, a response to altitude, an ability to tolerate cold. You are, at the molecular level, a collaboration of species, a chorus of ancient voices harmonizing in the present. It's humbling to realize that no one alive is pure anything. Every human being is a blend of countless migrations, mutations, and unions stretching back through deep time. The boundaries we draw today, nations, races, lineages, dissolve in the light of biology. The DNA inside a child born in Nairobi, Kyoto, or Reykjavik sings from the same alphabet, A with T, C with G, just rearranged in slightly different rhythms. We're all variations on one theme, written in the same 4 notes. The differences we see are only punctuation marks in a shared paragraph of life. This shared inheritance isn't just abstract data, it lives in your body's resilience and sensitivity. The colour of your skin, the density of your bones, the way you metabolize certain foods, all shaped by countless generations adapting to sun, wind, and scarcity. A gene that helped one group survive frost may still whisper in your own genome. Another that once guarded against drought may still affect how your body holds water. Even the rhythms of your sleep and the tilt of your circadian clock carry ancient memory, traces of night fires and migrations under unfamiliar stars. If you could trace your DNA back generation by generation, you would find that your family tree widens like a great river delta, merging with others until, eventually, it becomes the same water. About 100 generations ago, everyone alive shares at least one common ancestor. Go back a few thousand years, and those connections multiply until every lineage overlaps. Humanity is not a collection of separate trees, but a forest whose roots intertwine beneath the soil. The deeper you look, the more you see how inseparable we all are. The same molecular story can also be read in migrations. As early humans moved out of Africa, carrying their mitochondrial and Y chromosomal lineages. They left genetic footprints across the world. Each small variation that arose became a marker, a signpost for future generations to follow. Scientists can now read those signposts, tracing paths of ice and desert, of coastlines crossed and mountains scaled. In every person's DNA are remnants of those epic journeys. You're walking proof that someone long ago crossed a distance and survived. It's strange and beautiful to think that the cells inside you remember landscapes they've never seen. Deserts, jungles, glaciers, all encoded in the faint adjustments of your genes. Your blood chemistry, your immune system, your skin and lungs, each carries a souvenir from those environments, like postcards from a world you inherited but never had to visit. So when you look at your reflection, or at someone whose face seems completely different from yours, remember, the DNA beneath is almost identical. We all share 99.9% of the same sequence. The small differences are where history left its fingerprints, where the wind changed, where a family stayed or moved, where the story forked but never truly separated. You are not an isolated creation. You are a continuation of every living person who ever was, from the first mother whose mitochondria became yours, to the father whose chromosome might still echo in your cells, to the nameless ancestors who built shelters, sang songs, and looked up at the same moon you see tonight. Perhaps that's why the idea of ancestry stirs such emotion. It's not just about where you come from, but about belonging, a reminder that you carry within you the memory of millions. Every heartbeat is a shared rhythm. Every breath repeats a gesture that has passed through time unbroken. You're a verse added to a poem written by countless hands, still unfolding, still alive. And maybe, in knowing that, you can rest a little easier, knowing that you are never alone, never separate, but part of something that has been whispering your name since the dawn of humanity. The letters may change, the language may evolve, but the melody remains. A with T, C with G, the same music, endlessly recomposed, yet always the same song. As we drift further into the story, the focus begins to soften, from the letters of DNA to the way those letters are read. For if every cell in your body carries the same text, what makes one become skin, another heart, another memory itself? The secret lies not in the words, but in the bookmarks, the quiet signals that tell a cell which pages to open and which to keep closed. These bookmarks are the essence of what scientists call epigenetics, though we might think of it more gently as the art of remembering what to read and what to let rest. You can picture your DNA as a vast library that never changes its shelves. Every cell owns a complete copy, but no one has time to read it all. So the body leaves small marks along the way, chemical notes that guide the librarians inside your cells. Some of these marks act like do not disturb signs, closing a chapter for the moment. Others unfold a page and place a ribbon there, inviting it to be read again and again. In this way, your genome becomes dynamic, the same alphabet, but an endless variety of melodies depending on which lines are chosen. The molecules that carry out this guidance are simple, yet powerful. One kind, called a methyl group, is a cluster of carbon and hydrogen, but in our quiet story, it's enough to imagine it as a soft grey dot pressed beside a line of text, a reminder not to read that passage today. Another kind, which scientists call acetyl groups, do the opposite. They open the chromatin, loosening the thread of DNA from its spool, making the letters easier to see. If methyl marks close a door for rest, acetyl marks open a window for light. Together, they choreograph the rhythm of activity and silence, turning the pages of your molecular story with infinite care. These bookmarks don't change the sequence of your DNA. The letters, A with T, C with G, remain the same, written faithfully across your chromosomes. What changes is the emphasis, the pacing, the tone. You might think of it as a pianist playing from the same sheet music but altering the dynamics. Softer here, louder there, a pause before a crescendo. That is what epigenetics does. It teaches the same melody to sing in different ways, adapting the performance to each instrument. This system is how one genome creates the many textures of your body. In your skin cells, the bookmarks tell the story of protection, the genes for pigment, for renewal, for resilience. In your muscle cells, the notes turn the pages of motion and strength. In your neurons, they highlight the lines for thought, emotion, and memory. And though each cell reads from the same library, it interprets its role differently. It's the difference between violins, drums, and flutes in an orchestra, all reading the same score yet producing a layered harmony. These bookmarks are not fixed forever. They shift and respond to your experiences, to diet, to sleep, to movement, to the subtle weight of stress. The choices you make, the air you breathe, the love and fear and calm you feel, all ripple inward and whisper to these molecular marks. They listen to your environment, to the rhythm of your day and the seasons of your life. When you rest, certain pages close so your cells can repair. When you run or laugh or dream, others unfold to match the moment. Your genome isn't a static archive. It's a responsive companion, always adjusting to the tempo of living. Even within a single cell, the structure of DNA changes shape according to these cues. The histones, those tiny spools around which your DNA winds, can tighten or loosen, changing how accessible the information becomes. If the thread is drawn tight, the letters are hidden, like a book bound shut. When loosened, the story breathes again. You could say your DNA inhales and exhales in slow motion, expanding and contracting as needed, guided by the soft pressure of these marks. Life, at its deepest level, is an act of breathing in meaning. Sometimes these epigenetic bookmarks can linger long after the original event. The body remembers. A period of stress may leave certain genes slightly more open, preparing you to respond quickly if it happens again. A moment of safety or nourishment may add marks of calm, encouraging repair. In this way, the experiences of life, both hardship and joy, leave faint signatures that shape how your body behaves in the future. Your DNA remembers not through change in sequence, but through posture, the way it holds itself after being touched by the world. The most extraordinary part is that some of these marks can be passed on. The way your genes are read can echo across generations, even when the letters themselves stay the same. This isn't inheritance in the classical sense, but something gentler, a memory of conditions carried forward. Scientists have seen this in the descendants of those who lived through famine or stress. The Dutch hunger winter, for instance, left its imprint on the children and grandchildren of those who survived it. Small adjustments in how their bodies processed food and stored energy, as if the past whispered a warning. Be prepared, the world can grow empty. These epigenetic echoes remind us that the line between biology and experience is softer than we once thought. And just as some memories fade, these marks can also be erased or rewritten. Cells have their own erasers and highlighters, constantly tidying the text. Many of these changes happen naturally as we grow, and others can be influenced by how we live, by rest, by nourishment, by moments of calm or gratitude. Meditation, exercise, and even laughter have been shown to ripple through these molecular systems, loosening tension and restoring balance. In this sense, every act of care for yourself becomes an act of editing, polishing the tone of the pages within you. So tonight, as you breathe and listen, imagine your DNA as a book resting gently in candlelight. Its letters shimmer, but what makes the story alive are the bookmarks, the pauses, the highlights, the reminders of what matters most. Every cell in you is following its own set of cues, reading some lines, skipping others, all in perfect coordination. None of it is permanent. The book is meant to be reread again and again adjusting to the light, the season, the song. And perhaps there's a comfort in that, in knowing that even your molecular story isn't fixed in stone. It's written in pencil, in gentle strokes that can be changed with each new experience. Your body learns, adapts, and remembers, not to trap you in the past, but to carry your resilience forward. The 4 letters, A, T, C, and G, are constant, but the bookmarks make them human. They give your story rhythm, colour, and choice. They make you not just a pattern of inheritance, but a living reflection of how life listens to itself. From the soft hum of those molecular bookmarks, our story now turns to something even more intimate. The quiet way experience itself leaves its handwriting inside you. Every life you live through, every emotion you feel, every hunger, rest, or heartbreak leaves a trace so faint you might never sense it, yet the cells do. They record it not in letters but in tone, in which pages of your genetic library stay open and which are tucked away. You might imagine your body as a journal that writes in whispers, not words, but changes in emphasis, pauses and rhythms. When you eat, sleep, worry, laugh, or love, your cells respond. They do not understand these things as feelings. To them, everything is chemistry, yet the chemistry itself becomes memory. A comforting meal sends signals that open genes for repair and energy storage. Lack of sleep or lingering stress can nudge others into overwork. Genes that guard against danger staying on too long, the body acting as if the world never quiets. It is through these small, persistent messages that your inner world and outer life remain connected. Your DNA listens, not changing its letters, but tilting its posture, rearranging its bookmarks ever so slightly. Imagine, for example, a person living through a harsh winter long ago. Food was scarce and every cell learned to be thrifty, storing what little energy it could. The children born afterward, still nourished by those memories, carried the same caution in their metabolism. Centuries later, we can still read such stories in the DNA of their descendants. One of the clearest examples is what scientists call the Dutch hunger winter, a famine during the final year of World War II. Children conceived during that time grew up with subtle differences in how their bodies processed food, differences passed even to their own children. It's as if the body itself had whispered across generations, "Be careful, the world can grow lean." The marks left by hardship are not meant to punish, only to prepare. They are acts of remembrance, written in kindness by survival itself. The body cannot predict the future, but it can carry the echoes of the past, adjusting its expectations based on what it has seen. These changes, which scientists call epigenetic inheritance, remind us that memory is not only stored in the brain, but woven into the fabric of our cells. Your pulse, your digestion, even the way you respond to stress, carries the shape of experiences you never personally endured. You're a living echo of what others before you felt, feared, and overcame. But the same system that records hardship also records healing. When life is calm, when rest returns, when the environment grows safe again, the bookmarks shift once more. Genes that govern inflammation and repair take a gentler pace. Hormones realign with daylight and darkness. The body remembers what balance feels like and begins to hum in tune with it. This is why moments of quiet, time spent breathing deeply, walking slowly, sitting near water, or simply being still, matter more than we often think. They are not luxuries. They are edits, soothing the punctuation marks of your genome, helping it return to harmony. Even the mind states can ripple through this script. A thought of fear can quicken the heart and flood the bloodstream with messengers that touch the nucleus of nearly every cell. But a thought of gratitude or a deep breath taken before sleep sends a different message, one of safety, slowing, repair. Your emotions, though fleeting, leave molecular footprints, gently influencing which pages of your DNA are turned that day. This is not fantasy. It's the quiet conversation between chemistry and consciousness. Your body listens to the story you live, and sometimes it writes it down. When scientists study this process, they see how lifestyle becomes legacy. Exercise can loosen the chromatin, those tightly wound spools of DNA, allowing genes for energy and endurance to breathe more easily. A diet rich in real food and moderate in stress writes messages of stability and efficiency. Even laughter changes levels of stress hormones, creating small molecular adjustments that encourage calm. None of these things alter the letters themselves, yet they shape how the story is told. Each breath, each decision adds a tiny note to the ongoing symphony inside you. Perhaps the most astonishing part is that this dialogue between environment and biology happens in both directions. Your state of mind can alter your chemistry, and your chemistry can influence your state of mind. The same molecules that respond to stress also shape emotion and memory. When you live gently, the body learns gentleness. When you live in chronic tension, it stays on guard, even when no threat is present. But the beauty of the epigenetic system is that it can change. Pages that were once closed can reopen. Marks once dark can fade. Healing at its essence is rewriting, the body's way of adjusting the tone of its narrative. You can see this adaptability in moments both grand and small. A woman who recovers from illness, her cells gradually rewriting their notes of alarm into songs of balance. A child who grows up in warmth and safety, whose genes for stress remain softly silent. A person who begins to practice calm breathing or mindfulness each evening, unknowingly, shifting their biology toward peace. These acts of care, so quiet, so human, send ripples all the way down to the double helix. They remind your DNA that the world, for now, is kind enough to rest. If your genome were a book, the epigenetic marks would be its emotional undercurrents. The letters, A with T, C with G, remain constant, but the meaning changes with context, tone, and breath. The same sentence can be read as tragedy, comedy, or hope, depending on the voice. That's what your life does to your genome. It gives it a voice, a tempo, a reason to keep playing. Every choice you make adds a note, softening or brightening the melody that guides your body. So tonight, as you rest, perhaps you can feel a quiet gratitude for this adaptability, this gentle resilience that allows your story to keep evolving. You're not fixed. You're not written once and for all. Your DNA listens, breathes, and adjusts, marking moments of hardship and healing with equal care. Even as you sleep, it continues its subtle edits, closing some pages for repair, opening others to prepare for the morning. And as the night deepens, those 4 familiar letters, A, T, C, and G, continue to hum together, the same song of existence, always in motion, always rewriting itself toward balance. You are written in pencil, not stone, and that is life's greatest kindness. Our story now lifts its gaze outward, from the spirals within you to the vast network of lives that led here, to this moment, to this breath. Every strand of DNA you carry is not just yours. It is a thread pulled gently through thousands of generations, each one leaving a mark, a whisper, a direction. And though time may blur faces and names, your body still remembers their journeys. Somewhere inside you, the map of your ancestors quietly unfolds, written in the 4 familiar letters, A with T, C with G, each combination a footprint in an invisible landscape. Scientists call these traces haplogroups, but that word need not sound cold or technical. You might think of them as clusters of shared memory, small patterns in mitochondrial or Y-chromosomal DNA that mark the path of migration through time. Each tiny variation is like a breadcrumb left behind by someone who crossed a river, climbed a mountain, or followed the smell of rain toward new land. The pattern of those crumbs, scattered across the globe, forms a story of movement and survival, of courage carried in silence. In your mitochondrial DNA, the small circular code that passes down from mother to child. These breadcrumbs form one of the clearest trails of all. Each small change that appeared along the way became a signpost, allowing scientists to trace entire lineages of migration. One cluster might trace its origins to the savannas of eastern Africa, another to the coastal paths that curved through Arabia and into Asia. Some of these journeys led into the frozen north, others along rivers that would one day become the cradles of civilization. And through it all, each new generation carried the same spark, energy flowing through the mitochondria like an unbroken flame, the same kind of flame now flickering quietly in you. The Y chromosome passed from father to son tells a parallel story. It too collects small changes over time, single-letter variations that accumulate like subtle shifts in dialect. Each variation becomes a marker of a different branch of the human family, a new chapter in the shared novel of humankind. You can almost picture the world as a tree made of light, its roots deep in Africa, its branches spreading out toward every continent, each glowing faintly with the echoes of those who walked before us. Together these trails, maternal and paternal, ancient and recent, reveal a simple truth that modern maps sometimes forget. Borders are temporary, migrations eternal. The same DNA that flows through people in South America once crossed Siberia on foot. The code that hums in Europe once drifted with nomads through the Middle East. The patterns in Polynesian DNA trace back to canoes that sailed by starlight. The Earth remembers, even when nations do not. Your genome is a record of every migration that ever mattered, written in letters so small they can only be read under the patience of science or the poetry of imagination. When scientists began to piece together these global patterns, they discovered something humbling. The differences that define our many peoples are small, so small that two strangers from opposite sides of the planet may share more in common than two neighbours from the same city. The human story is not a set of separate books, but a single, ongoing novel with countless overlapping pages. Each population carries bits of others, like shared verses in an ancient song, and yet in the modern age this story has taken on a new form of curiosity. You can now send a vial of your saliva to a laboratory, and weeks later receive a map that tells you where your ancestors once walked. These genetic ancestry tests work by comparing your DNA to databases filled with millions of others, finding small patterns of similarity, the way a song might recognize its own echo. But the truth behind those colourful maps is softer than the advertisements suggest. What they show are probabilities, not certainties, faint brushstrokes, not borders. The results are not destinations, but invitations to wonder. Your DNA does not belong to a single place. It belongs to all the places your ancestors ever touched, to the winds they felt, the food they tasted, the language their mouths learned to shape. If one test says 50% from one region and 20% from another, what it really means is that the story of you is woven across centuries of movement and mixing. Those percentages are not walls, they are colours blending on a palette. Perhaps this is why, when people receive their results, they often feel more connected than divided. A person who thought of themselves as from one nation suddenly sees traces of others, a northern root, a southern branch, a thread of heritage from somewhere unexpected. It's a reminder that our identities, like our genomes, are mosaics, not confined to categories, but made of endless intersections. We carry the signatures of traders, wanderers, dreamers, refugees, and poets. Each mutation, each variation, is a tiny act of storytelling across time. If you could look down at Earth through this lens, not of politics or power, but of ancestry, you would see a glowing web wrapping the planet, each line connecting to another, no space left untouched by human footsteps. Every migration, whether by necessity or curiosity, carved a new pattern into that web. It is still there, shimmering invisibly in every living person, unbroken and alive. When you think about your ancestors, You might imagine them in old photographs, in stories told by elders, or perhaps in names you've never heard. But your DNA holds deeper memories still. Memories from before language, before civilization, before even the idea of ancestry existed. The molecules within you remember the first people who tamed fire, who crossed rivers swollen with ice, who stood beneath skies filled with unfamiliar stars and decided to walk toward them. You're the continuation of their curiosity, their hunger for the unknown. The same code that gave them strength to endure is what helps you breathe tonight. Their courage lives on as chemistry, their love as resilience, their hope as the steady rhythm of replication, the pairing of A with T and C with G, repeating endlessly, keeping the song alive. So, when you think of where you come from, you might look beyond maps and names. You're not from a single country or a single time. You're from the long road of humankind itself, from migrations and meetings, from the hands that built shelters and lit fires, from the faces that watched dawn and dusk before history began to write. All of that is still here, in you, written softly in the language of life. Borders fade, migrations remain, and within your cells, the invisible family tree still grows, its branches spreading across time, across oceans, across the quiet distance between one heartbeat and the next. From the quiet patterns of migration, our story now opens wider, into the living network that connects us all. If you were to trace your family tree back through time, following every parent to their parents, every grandparent to theirs, the branches would spread faster than imagination can keep up. 2 parents become 4 grandparents, then 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, and on and on. By just 20 generations, your tree would hold over 1 million names, more people than most cities contain. And yet, the farther back you go, the more those branches begin to overlap. Your ancestors start sharing ancestors of their own, until all the separate trees blend into one great forest. Somewhere in that forest, everyone meets. Every person alive today shares common ancestors if you look back far enough. The scientist term for this is most recent common ancestor, but you can think of it more gently, as the single campfire around which all stories eventually merge. If you were to travel back 50,000 years, you would find the people who link you to every other human alive. Some of them wandered north through deserts, others east along coasts, some into forests or plains, yet all were part of the same family, carrying the same ancient flame in their DNA. That flame, passed along letter by letter, A with T, C with G, still burns inside you. Modern research has shown that humans everywhere share about 99.9% of their DNA. The small remainder, that 0.1%, holds the variations that shape our visible diversity, the curl of hair, the tone of skin, the subtle rhythm of metabolism. It's astonishing to think that all of our apparent differences come from such tiny rearrangements. You and a stranger on the other side of the planet are almost identical, separated only by a handful of small spelling differences in the 3 billion letters that form your genome. We are all, quite literally, editions of the same book, different printings of one story told in infinite accents. You might picture your genome as a patchwork quilt stitched from countless scraps of fabric. Some pieces are bright and new, others faded with time. Each square comes from a different ancestor, sewn together by the steady hands of inheritance. Some panels may carry patterns from Africa, others from Europe or Asia, others from ancestors who lived where maps still had no names. There are no clean borders between the colours. Every stitch overlaps another, just as every lineage overlaps with someone else's. What results is a pattern too intricate to ever fully trace, but beautiful precisely because of that. If you look at humanity through this lens, it becomes impossible to find true separations. The genetic distance between any 2 people is smaller than the difference between neighbouring tribes of chimpanzees. The labels we use, nationality, ethnicity, race, are social inventions layered on top of a biological reality that is much simpler and far more inclusive. The genome does not recognize nations or languages, it recognizes only connection. Even the words them and us dissolve when viewed at this scale. All that remains is we, the ongoing experiment of life in motion. The world's history, when read through DNA, is not a record of division, but of reunion. Every migration that once seemed like departure was actually an eventual return. Populations that wandered apart thousands of years ago met again later through trade, travel, and curiosity. The Mediterranean became a genetic meeting place. The Silk Road stitched Asia and Europe together with threads of shared ancestry. The oceans, once barriers, became pathways that carried human voices around the world. You can almost imagine the planet itself breathing, inhaling migration, exhaling diversity. Each movement blending humanity into something richer. And in the present day, that blending continues faster than ever. Airplanes, cities, and the internet now do what rivers and deserts once did. Carry our genes, our cultures, and our stories to new places. If someone were to read the DNA of future generations, they would find a web even denser and more intertwined than today's. The distinctions that once seemed vast, skin colour, eye shape, hair texture, may someday fade into the background of a shared heritage. What will remain is what has always mattered most, the shared melody that began long before history, written in those 4 letters of life. Science gives us tools to measure that connection. Population genetics uses small variations, single letters changed along the spiral, as landmarks, like constellations across the human sky. Each variation, called a single nucleotide polymorphism, or SNP, is a kind of timestamp. It tells us where and when a small change occurred and how it travelled through descendants. Over time, these patterns reveal not only our differences, but our unity, the vast branching story of how humans explored, adapted, and met again. The picture that emerges is not a hierarchy, but a weave. No line superior, no thread alone. Yet what's most moving about this knowledge isn't its data, but its poetry. To know that your DNA carries fragments of people you'll never know, shepherds, builders, wanderers, mothers, healers, is to feel, in a way, less alone. It reminds you that you're not an isolated point in time, but part of a continuum. Every heartbeat echoes a rhythm begun in someone else's chest thousands of years ago. Every breath carries atoms that have passed through countless lungs before yours. Even the calcium in your bones was forged in the hearts of ancient stars, scattered into space and gathered again into your body. You're both the dust of galaxies and the descendant of travellers, stardust and strangers, stitched into one. So when you hear someone speak of ancestry, remember that it isn't only about bloodlines or geography. It's about connection, the invisible bonds that link you to everyone who has ever lived. You share 99.9% of your being with every other human, but perhaps the deeper truth is that you share the same origin with all living things. The letters A, T, C, and G are not uniquely yours. They are the alphabet of life itself, the same 4 notes used to compose every song on Earth, from the whisper of a fern to the cry of a newborn child. And maybe that's what the genome really tells us, that life does not compete with itself. It harmonizes, it weaves, it repeats, it evolves. Each generation adds its own variation, its own voice in the choir. You're a single verse in that eternal song, shaped by history, sustained by memory, and connected to everything that ever breathed. So as you listen now, perhaps take a slow breath and feel it. The quiet pulse of the same story moving through you. The one story told by many threads and still being written in the dark by the patient pairing of A with T and C with G. From the long story of ancestry, our journey now drifts gently toward a more recent chapter. one where humanity began to read its own instructions. For thousands of years, people looked at the night sky and wondered what was written out there. But at the end of the 20th century, we turned our gaze inward, realizing that the greatest map of all was folded within ourselves. The Human Genome Project was born from that realization, a global effort to read the entire book of life, letter by letter, and to finally see what makes us, us. It began in 1990, at a time when sequencing even a small piece of DNA was a slow, careful art. The task ahead seemed impossible. The genome contained 3 billion letters, a code written in just 4 characters, A paired with T and C paired with G, repeating again and again in endless rhythm. Scientists from around the world joined together. Biologists, mathematicians, engineers, computer scientists. For 13 years they worked in quiet coordination, sharing data across continents. Their goal was simple but profound: to reveal for the first time the full sequence of the human genome. The work was painstaking. DNA had to be cut into fragments, each read separately, then assembled like a vast jigsaw puzzle. Computers helped, but even the most advanced machines of the time struggled to manage the sheer volume of data. Each small section, thousands of letters long, had to be checked, cross-checked, and placed in order, ensuring every piece of the spiral found its place. The image that emerged was more intricate than anyone had imagined. Not a smooth paragraph of text, but a landscape of repeats, loops, and echoes. Still, bit by bit, the picture took shape. In April 2003, after 13 years of patient reading, the Human Genome Project announced that the first draft was complete. Humanity had decoded its own instruction manual. For the first time, we could look at the letters, all 3 billion of them, and see the language of life laid out before us. It was an extraordinary moment, both scientific and deeply human, and what they found was, in many ways, humbling. For all our complexity, our genome contains only about 20,000 to 25,000 genes, fewer than a grape, fewer than a tiny roundworm in the soil. The rest of our DNA, once thought to be useless junk, turned out to hold the rhythm and punctuation of our biological story, the silent pauses that let the melody breathe. In those spaces between genes lay the keys to how, when, and where life's instructions are read. It was as if the project had opened the world's greatest symphony and discovered that most of the beauty lies not in the notes, but in the rests between them. Perhaps the most striking discovery was how similar we all are. Every human being shares more than 99.9% of the same genetic sequence. The small differences, less than 1/10 of 1%, are what create the incredible diversity of our species. Skin tones, hair textures, immune responses, even the way we process food or handle altitude, all come from these tiny changes scattered like stars across our genomes. The rest, the vast 99.9%, is identical in all of us. You share it with your neighbours, with strangers, with people you've never met on continents you've never seen. Among those small differences, scientists found what they called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, pronounced like SNPs. But here, let's think of them as gentle flickers, single-letter variations that make each person's story distinct. They are not mistakes, merely differences, the way 2 copies of the same poem might have 1 comma placed slightly higher, or 1 word written with a different flourish. These little flickers form patterns that can tell us about ancestry, disease risk, or even how the body responds to certain medicines. They are, in a sense, the individual handwriting of your DNA. The completion of the Human Genome Project was not the end of discovery, but the beginning of a new kind of reading. With the sequence in hand, researchers began to search for meaning, which sections were responsible for particular traits, which carried the roots of illness, which held the potential for healing. The genome was a map, yes, but one drawn in symbols we were only beginning to interpret. As one scientist said at the time, "We have read the book of life, now we must learn its grammar." That grammar turned out to be subtle and full of nuance. The same gene could behave differently depending on its surroundings. The same letter change could be silent in one person and significant in another. DNA was not a rigid blueprint, but a flexible script, full of possibility. Understanding it required not only logic, but empathy, a willingness to see that every pattern was part of a greater whole. The Human Genome Project also changed how we see ourselves as a species. For centuries, people had divided humanity into categories by skin, by geography, by language, imagining those differences as deep and absolute. But the genome revealed what poets and philosophers had long intuited, that our distinctions are surface ripples on the same deep ocean. Beneath them, the same current flows through us all. The collaboration itself mirrored that truth. Scientists from the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, France, Germany, China, and many other nations worked side by side, their efforts combined into one shared achievement. It was, in its own way, an embodiment of what the genome had shown, that when we recognise our commonality, we can build something extraordinary together, and even now the work continues. Sequencing has become faster, cheaper, more complete. New technologies can read an entire human genome in hours instead of years. With each new advance, we learn not only more about our biology, but more about our shared story. We can trace ancient migrations, predict the course of disease, and understand how life adapts and endures. Yet the deeper the reading goes, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just science. It's a form of listening, a way of hearing the quiet song that has been playing inside every living thing since the beginning of time. The map may be complete, but the meaning is still unfolding. We have read the letters, but the poetry remains to be understood, and in that sense, the Human Genome Project wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning, a gentle turning of the first page in the greatest story ever written, the one still being copied and sung by the spirals inside you tonight. The trail of discovery now carries us into the present, to an age where reading the code of life has become as swift as it once was slow, and as personal as it once was abstract. What began as a monumental scientific project, powered by entire nations, can now be done by a small machine sitting quietly on a laboratory table, or even, in some cases, on a doctor's desk. The story that once took 13 years to unfold can now be told in a single day. But as the words of the genome become easier to read, a more delicate question emerges. What do we do with this knowledge? The Human Genome Project gave us the complete script, but not the full understanding of its poetry. Since then, new technologies have allowed scientists to zoom in on the details, to explore not only the sequence of letters, but how they interact, how they change, how they can be guided. In the early years, this effort was called genomic medicine. Now it has evolved into something broader, something we might call precision medicine, care-shaped around the uniqueness of each person's DNA. Instead of one-size-fits-all treatments, doctors can tailor therapies to your particular biological composition, reading the small variations, those tiny flickers where an A replaces a G, and choosing medicine accordingly. In this new era, your DNA becomes part of your medical record, not as a secret, but as a guide. Imagine a future hospital visit where a small drop of blood reveals which medications will help you best, which might cause side effects, and which genes could be nurtured or protected. Already, in some corners of the world, this isn't imagination but reality. Cancer therapies can be matched precisely to the genetic signatures of a tumour. Rare diseases, once lifelong mysteries, can be traced to a single letter change in the code. Babies can be tested for hundreds of conditions before symptoms ever appear, giving families the gift of time to prepare, to treat, to hope. These are miracles born from knowledge, but they also ask for gentleness in how that knowledge is used. For alongside the promise of precision comes the weight of responsibility. If DNA is the script of life, who has the right to edit it? A technology called CRISPR has brought that question to the forefront. CRISPR, a quiet acronym that stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats, allows scientists to make small, precise changes to the letters of DNA. It's as if humanity has been handed a pencil sharp enough to rewrite the sentences of its own story. With CRISPR, we can correct mutations that cause disease, remove viruses hidden in the genome, or even alter the traits of future generations. The possibilities are breathtaking and unsettling, because while editing the script may heal, it can also tempt us to reshape what doesn't need fixing. Should we use this power only to cure, or also to enhance? Should we design not only healthier children, but smarter, taller, more resistant ones? These are not questions of technology, but of philosophy, of ethics and humility. The genome is both our inheritance and our shared artwork. Every stroke added to it changes the entire canvas. We're not merely readers now. We have become editors, perhaps even co-authors, and that is a role that demands more compassion than ambition. Many scientists speak of this moment with both wonder and caution. To edit life is to hold both the scalpel and the brush. A correction in one place might echo unexpectedly elsewhere, like tugging a thread in a tapestry that unravels another pattern far away. The genome's beauty lies in its balance, in how every letter, even the seemingly silent ones, has a purpose. And so, the new frontier of genetics is not only about what we can do, but about what we choose to do and why. Meanwhile, the effort to understand continues on a global scale. In 2022, researchers completed the first truly gap-free human genome, filling in the missing parts that early sequencing had left blank. These were regions once too repetitive or complex to decode, like pages blurred by time. Now, with newer technologies, those pages have been restored. We can see the entire spiral without interruption, revealing subtleties that were once invisible. It's as though a painting we thought we knew has been cleaned of centuries of dust, and suddenly the colours shimmer brighter. Alongside this technical achievement, new projects have emerged. Immense collaborations designed to represent the full diversity of humankind. One of the most ambitious is the All of Us project in the United States, which seeks to collect genetic and health data from 1 million volunteers of all backgrounds. Its goal is to ensure that the benefits of genomic medicine reach everyone, not just a privileged few. For too long, most research focused narrowly on people of European descent, leaving gaps in understanding that led to inequality in care. The new wave of studies aims to correct that, to build a library of humanity as vast and inclusive as the world itself. Artificial intelligence now joins this endeavour, serving as a quiet translator between biology and meaning. Machines can sift through oceans of genetic data, finding patterns far too subtle for any human eye. They are learning to recognise the faint rhythms of disease, the hints of resilience, the echoes of ancestry, all through the language of A with T, C with G. Yet even as these digital minds help us see farther, they remind us of something ancient. Knowledge without humility is noise. The genome is not a code to be conquered, it's a song to be heard carefully, with awe. It's worth pausing then to see how far we've come. In just a few decades, we've gone from not knowing the number of our genes to editing them with microscopic precision. We've turned DNA from mystery into medicine, from abstraction into understanding. And yet, for all our advances, one truth remains unchanged. The letters of life still pair in the same old way, humming softly through every cell. A with T, C with G. They have done so for billions of years, long before we knew their names, and they will continue long after we're gone. The future of genetics will not be written in laboratories alone. It will be written in choices, in how we decide to use what we've learned, and in how we remember that the story of life belongs to everyone. Perhaps that's the true gift of this new era. not just precision, but perspective. We have learned to read the book of life, but we must also remember to respect its poetry. As we stand on the threshold of this new age, it's worth returning to a simple truth. Knowledge is not ownership. To read the genome is not to control it, but to recognize the wonder of being part of it. We are not outside the story, peering in. We are within it, written into its pages, coexisting with every living thing that shares the same alphabet. To edit the script of life wisely, we must first remember to listen to the quiet rhythm of A with T, C with G, still unfolding beneath our fingertips. The path now circles gently back inward, from the vast networks of science and discovery to the soft pulse that still beats inside you. Because even as we chart the genome and decode its poetry, the true wonder remains in its quiet persistence. Every second, in every cell of your body, the story continues. The spirals unwind, copy themselves, fold again, and carry on. This constant motion is life's quiet song. An orchestra without sound, a melody played in molecules. If you could shrink yourself down to the scale of a cell and drift among its structures, you'd find that nothing stands still. The DNA, that double helix you've carried since your first breath, is always at work. One section is being read, another folded neatly away, another gently repaired after a small nick or twist. Enzymes, the patient musicians of this inner concert, glide along the strands like fingers on strings, opening the code, duplicating it, restoring its rhythm. There's no rush, no chaos, only a continuous pulse, precise and unending. Each of your cells holds roughly 2 meters of DNA, curled and wound to fit into a space smaller than a speck of dust. In total, if all the DNA in your body was stretched end to end, it would reach far beyond the moon, and yet every molecule is perfectly folded, perfectly timed. Within that impossible order lies something deeply comforting, the realization that you are not simply alive because of DNA, but because of what DNA does. It reads, it copies, it mends, it listens. It keeps its promises. The same letters are paired with T, C paired with G, repeat over and over in every cell like notes on a page of music. The pairing never tires, never falters. Each bond is small, each connection temporary, yet together they hold the memory of you, your height, your voice, the tilt of your face, the rhythm of your heartbeat. These letters are your cell's alphabet of devotion, endlessly rewriting the same truth. You are still here. Replication happens constantly. In your skin, millions of cells divide every hour. In your gut, in your blood, in your lungs, the same dance unfolds. The spiral unwinds, each strand serving as a template for its partner, ensuring the next cell inherits a flawless copy. It's as if every moment your body reaffirms its existence, one base pair at a time. The act is both mechanical and miraculous, a reminder that even repetition can be beautiful when done with care. Sometimes the process slips, a letter is missed or swapped or repeated. But as we've seen, those small errors are not failures, they are variations in the rhythm, little improvisations that give life texture. The same enzymes that read and copy also repair. When a strand breaks, repair molecules rush in like gentle healers, mending the cut, smoothing the edges, ensuring the music never stutters. The system is so finely tuned that it corrects almost every error before it becomes a problem. Yet a few slip through, and in those slips lie both fragility and evolution. The body, it seems, trusts itself enough to allow small imperfections. This quiet balance between stability and change is what keeps you alive and what keeps life growing. You're made not only of what your genes say, but of how faithfully and imperfectly they are read. It is in this mixture of precision and spontaneity that individuality blooms. Every breath you take, every heartbeat, Every thought is accompanied by this molecular rhythm, unbroken, tireless, and astonishingly gentle. If you listen closely to your own body, to the rise and fall of your chest, the subtle pulse at your wrist, you can almost hear it. Beneath those sounds, beneath muscles and nerves, the same processes hum softly. Transcription, translation, repair. DNA is never silent. Even in sleep it works, rebuilding, renewing, whispering the instructions for tomorrow. In the stillness of night, when the world grows quiet, your cells continue their steady labour, keeping the promise that life made long before you were born. The difference between human time and molecular time is vast. To you, a second is a blink, a moment passing unnoticed. To a cell, it's an era. Enough time for thousands of letters to be copied, folded, or repaired. Over the course of your lifetime, your body will create and replace trillions of cells, each one a tiny world, each one faithfully transcribing the same script. If eternity exists anywhere, it is here, in the constant motion of molecules that never sleep. And yet, for all its constancy, DNA is not emotionless. There's a kind of poetry in its persistence. It endures without complaint, adapts without resistance, and carries forward without judgment. It remembers what needs to be remembered, forgets what must be forgotten, and trusts that the next cell will do the same. You might think of your genome as an old musician, wise, calm, playing a melody that has been passed down for billions of years. The same tune, changing subtly with each new performance, but always recognizable. This continuity links you to everything alive. The DNA in a maple leaf, in a whale, in a sparrow, in your own cells, all share the same alphabet, the same underlying rhythm. Every living thing on Earth sings the same molecular song, varying only in verse. You are part of that chorus, as connected to the grass beneath your feet as to the stars that gave you the atoms of your body. The same patterns that spiral in your cells once spiraled in ancient oceans, in the earliest forms of life that learned how to copy themselves. In a sense, the first living cell never truly died. It divided and divided again until it became you. When you think of it that way, continuity is not just a concept. It's a kind of mercy. It means that nothing living is ever truly alone. The same flow of information that began at the dawn of life has never stopped moving. It is still moving now within you, like a tide that never recedes. Every cell that divides, every letter that pairs, A with T, C with G, is a moment of remembrance, a continuation of the first breath the universe ever took. And perhaps this is the quiet truth that the genome teaches us. Life is not a thing, but a motion, an unending act of reading and rewriting, of balance and change. You are written by that motion, and when your time ends, it will continue writing through others. The story will go on, as it always has, as it always will. So tonight, as you rest, imagine that you are listening to that song, the hum of continuity that plays inside you. You're not separate from it. You are one of its instruments. The same melody that moves through the cells of a tree, a bird, or a distant whale is moving through you. And in that vast shared rhythm, there is no loneliness, only the gentle comfort of belonging to the poem that never ends. And now, as our journey draws to its softest close, we return to where it began, to you, to the quiet, breathing being lying somewhere in the dark, wrapped in thought and warmth, carrying within you a story older than time. Every strand of your DNA, every gentle pairing of A with T and C with G, has been writing since before there were words, before there were oceans or skies as we know them. The letters have changed, the tone has shifted, but the song continues. It always does. Inside your body, the script never sleeps. Each cell, each molecule continues to read and reread its lines, folding the same poem into 1,000 forms. When you breathe in, oxygen slips into your bloodstream and drifts toward your cells, feeding the tiny factories that keep this manuscript alive. The mitochondria hum softly, converting that breath into energy. The same energy that powered your mother and hers before her all the way back to the first spark of life on Earth. The rhythm of it is both intimate and infinite, a pulse that binds you to everything that ever lived. If you could see yourself as your DNA does, you'd appear not as a single person, but as a constellation of motion, trillions of tiny worlds, each glowing with purpose. Within each, the same double helix curls and uncurls, copying itself, repairing itself, making sure that nothing is lost. You are a living archive of the universe's memory. Every cell in your body is a library, and every one of them carries the complete text of who you are, and more beautifully, who you came from. You are not separate from your ancestors, you are their continuation. Every gesture you make, every heartbeat, is a repetition of theirs, written again in your own cadence. The courage that let your ancestors cross mountains or oceans is encoded not only in stories but in molecules. The same instructions that built their hands, their hearts, their eyes still flow within you, adjusting, learning, adapting. You are the next chapter of a story that began billions of years ago, a story of carbon and water and starlight, finding ways to remember itself. For when you look at your DNA, or rather when scientists do on your behalf, what you see is not merely chemistry. You see memory, you see survival, you see the echoes of fish that learned to breathe air, of mammals that hid in the dark after the dinosaurs fell, of humans who looked up and wondered at the stars. The same sequence, copied and adjusted through ages, has built everything from coral reefs to forests, from blue whales to fireflies. And tonight, that same code hums softly within you as the world outside turns in its sleep. Think for a moment of how improbable it is that you exist at all. Every letter in your genome, 3 billion of them repeating and weaving, had to align perfectly, not once but countless times through history, for you to take this shape, this form, this consciousness. Every pairing of A with T and C with G carries the memory of survival, of chance and care and connection. You're not just a collection of cells, you are the product of persistence. The universe has spent nearly 14 billion years learning to make someone exactly like you, even if only for this fleeting moment in time. And yet the script does not end with you. It never does. Your body, even now, is leaving its own notes, traces that may ripple forward, not only through offspring or relatives, but through every molecule you release into the world. Every breath carries atoms once part of other lives, now part of yours, and soon to be part of others again. The carbon in your lungs, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, they all come from stars that died long before Earth was born. You are quite literally made of the universe's handwriting. When you think of your DNA as a script, it's easy to imagine it as finished, a closed book, an instruction manual complete. But it isn't. It's a living manuscript, one that continues to change every day. The methyl marks and folds, the small rearrangements of its letters, they shift and adapt as you live, responding to your choices, your environment, your emotions. Each new experience leaves a trace, a page slightly turned, a note added in the margins. Your genome is not a frozen record of what you were, it's an evolving reflection of who you are becoming. And beyond that, you are part of the greater manuscript, the shared book of all life. The same alphabet that writes your story writes the story of every tree, bird, and whale. In every direction, the world hums with the same 4-letter code, like a quiet chant beneath all things. When you eat, when you breathe, when you rest, that code continues its eternal exchange. Life passes through life, again and again, remixing its verses into endless new forms. You're part of that remix, a unique stanza in the longest poem ever written. The story of DNA isn't only about biology, it's about continuity, about how something so small can carry so much meaning, about how order can rise from chaos and stay balanced for billions of years. It's about a universe that learned to fold its own particles into awareness, then look back and whisper, "I am alive." That whisper is you, quiet, steady, unfolding. So as you listen now, maybe you can imagine your body as an orchestra at rest. Every cell a musician, every strand of DNA a sheet of music, each playing its part with infinite care. The melody is constant, though it changes in tone, sometimes vibrant, sometimes soft, but always true. You don't have to hear it to know it's there. You feel it in your heartbeat, in your breath, in the warmth of your hands. It is the sound of being, the quiet script of life itself. And though this exploration must end here, the story it tells does not. Your DNA will continue its gentle work long after these words fade. It will keep writing and rewriting, as it has done since the dawn of existence. It will carry your memories, your resilience, your quiet miracles forward into every tomorrow that life allows. So let the night take you now. Let the rhythm of A with T, C with G rock you into calm. You have always been part of this story. You have always been enough. You're a living manuscript still being written, a verse added to the great poem of life, whose ink is light, whose pages are time, and whose final line will never come. And as you drift into sleep, may you dream of that poem continuing, quietly, endlessly, within you and beyond you.